will now call this September 19th, 2023 Joliet Township High School Board meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Stiff,
Present.
Mr. Kennedy,
Here.
Mr. Fitzpatrick,
Here.
Mrs. Lynn,
Here.
Mrs. Guerrero-Numer,
Here.
Dr. Huntington,
Here.
Mr. Coffey.
Will you please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance by standing?
Opposed? Colors? Present. Arms?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Order. Arms? Outward. Face. Forward. March.
You may be seated. Oh, sorry. On behalf of the Board of Education, I would like to welcome all of our visitors that are in person and those watching via live stream. Ms. Rico, do we have anyone wishing to address the board? Thank you. We will now go into our consent agenda. May I have a motion?
Second.
Questions, comments?
Are we talking about the check register?
Yes.
approval? Can you remove and vote separately on the Hopewell Schools bills?
Yes. So may I have a motion to remove Hopewell from the consent agenda?
Is it remove, or you don't want to vote on that portion?
I want it voted on separately.
Okay, can we, I'll make a motion to vote on the consent agenda minus the Hopewell schools.
May I have a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Stiff,
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy,
Yes.
Mr. Fitzpatrick,
Yes.
Mrs. Lynn,
Yes.
Mrs. Guerrero-Numer,
Yes.
Dr. Huntington.
Yes.
And now a motion to vote on the remainder of the consent agenda. Second.
Oh,
Second, sorry.
That's okay.
Roll call.
Dr. Huntington,
to
You can
just
abstain.
set.
It's
the
for the,
separate-
it's for the part that you wanted.
Right, to approve it or just to approve it being on a separate vote?
No, this is the vote to approve that consent
Abstain.
part. Okay, there you go.
Mrs. Stiff,
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy,
Yes.
Mr. Fitzpatrick,
Yes.
Mrs. Lynn,
Yes.
Mrs. Guerrero-Numer.
Yes.
Now we're voting on the consent agenda, right?
No,
No,
we
you
just did,
just did.
yeah, we just did it in two parts.
Gotcha. Okay. All right, now we'll have recognition.
Good evening and thank you. I'm Shad Hallahan, Principal at Joliet Central. We're going to start with district recognitions first. This past summer we had, for the first time ever, the JTHS Health Week. We had community members, community partners, and staff who put together this opportunity for our students and families to get ahead of all the physical requirements that are, as I'm sure you're all aware, with the shots and the immunizations and physicals and everything. And oftentimes many of our families struggle getting into an appointment or getting in to get that taken care of before the beginning of the school year. So some of our staff members, under the leadership of our health aide, Amy Carroll, put together this event where one day we had Will County Health, I believe, out with a mobile unit. We partnered with Jewel Osco, who came out and sent people out to give the immunizations. So we really just appreciate that we have staff and community members who are willing to work together and try to provide these additional opportunities for our families to overcome some potential barriers to getting these things taken care of so that students can be in school right away. So thank you to everyone we're going to recognize here for putting this on. So starting with staff, we have Rose Alipio. If you could come forward when I call your name, please, so we can recognize you. Miss Amy Carroll, who I mentioned. Maria Castaneda. John Pereiro. Renee Rink. Alicia Rojas. And Christine Schlissman. And then our community partners who helped with this were Renee Arnold, Lisa Carlson, Melissa Golden Barnett, Kathleen Harkins, and Mary Spada.
Christine, I'll take a picture so you can get it. You're welcome. You guys are going to center right here in the middle.
And we can clap. This district, he's just gonna keep going.
Oh, sure.
Even it out.
There we go.
Next, for the campuses, tonight we are proud to recognize JTHS students who earned academic honors from the College Board National Recognition Programs. These programs celebrate students' hard work in high school and showcase their strong academic performance. The academic honors for rural area, Black, Indigenous, and/or Latino students are an opportunity for students to share their strong academic achievements with colleges and scholarship programs that are seeking to recruit diverse talent. The criteria for eligible students include a GPA of 3.5 or higher, a PSAT, NMSQT, or PSAT 10 assessment score that is within the top 10% of assessment takers in each state for each award program, or the student must earn a score of 3 or higher on 2 or more AP exams in the 9th or 10th grade. So that's quite an accomplishment, so congratulations to all of you. I will start by introducing the Joliet Central students who have earned this honor. And again, when I call your name, if you could please come forward to be recognized. The following students received the College Board National African American Recognition Award: Angela Ayavor, Xavier Brass, Sharon Cage, Chatier Figueroa, and Trevor Koch. And then the following Central students received the College Board National Hispanic Recognition Award: Samantha Aguilera, Michelle Castanera Castillo, Andy Granados, Jose Martinez, Giselle Ramos Martinez, Estrella Pantoja, and Jose Perez Sanchez. Congratulations to all of you.
I invite any parents that would like to come up, please, if you can, if you would like to. I'll step aside. Congratulations.
And then finally, I have the honor of also introducing the Joliet West students who received similar awards this evening. Unfortunately, Ms. Parker, the principal from West, had an emergency after school, wasn't able to be here. So I am happy to do this on her behalf, especially as a Joliet West alum, who I don't think I ever received any award like this. So, but it's not about me. So we already read the criteria. The following students from Joliet West received College Board National Hispanic Recognition Award: Elisa Jimenez, Elena Paramo. If you're here, please come up when I call your name. Jose Navarez, Kiara Rodriguez, Lauren Harms, Marco Sanchez Cervantes, Paola Avila, and Sofia Jaramillo. Next, these students received the College Board National African American Recognition Award: Deanna Applegate, Kaylin Sudbury, Morgan Pork, and Sanaya Newman. And then Joliet West had one student who received the College Board National Indigenous Award, and that was Paul Coffey. Congratulations.
We are so proud of our staff and our students that are committed and dedicated to the work that they do. And for that, we're going to come down and greet you and congratulate you. 5-minute recess. Thank you.
Wait, you're saying I get to be
Have to call it back to order. We will now go into our superintendent report.
Thank you. So there's no correspondence or legislative information to share, so you can move straight to breakfast after the bell hearing.
May I have a motion to open the public hearing being held for Joliet Central and Pathways Campus to opt out of the breakfast after the bell mandate?
So moved.
Yes.
Second.
Roll call. Is that right?
Excuse me. Mr. Fitzpatrick?
Yes.
Mrs. Lynn?
Yes.
Mrs. Guerrero-Numer?
Yes.
Dr. Huntington?
Yes.
Mrs. Stiff?
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy?
Yes.
We're still here.
Is that better? Good evening, I'm Brian Shaw. I'm the Director of Support Services here at Joliet Township High School. Part of my job is overseeing the National School Lunch Program and Breakfast Program. So I am here tonight to speak on behalf of the administration and talk briefly about the breakfast after the bell mandate and our recommendation to opt out for the 23-24 school year. We have a full breakfast program in place. The breakfast after the bell mandate is in addition to our full breakfast program we already offer. PA 990850 requires school districts to provide breakfast after the bell in public schools in which at least 70% of the students were eligible for free or reduced price meals in October of the preceding year. Breakfast after the bell means breakfast must be provided and served after the instructional day has officially begun. Schools can decide the best method to provide the meals after the start of the instructional day. Some of the suggested options were, serving breakfast in the classrooms, using grab-and-go carts, or creating an extended passing period, for instance, between periods 1 and 2 or 2 and 3, so students can purchase meals in the cafeteria. Schools are allowed to opt out of the mandate for specific reasons, such as the cost to run the program is financially prohibitive. Joliet West is exempt from the mandate since the number of free and reduced eligible students was below the 70%. Joliet Central and Pathways are required to provide the breakfast after the bell or to opt out. So I'm here tonight to recommend the district opt out for the following reasons. The cost analysis indicates that the state and federal reimbursements will not fully cover the cost of implementing and maintaining a breakfast after the bell program. Again, this is a program outside of the normal breakfast program we already offer. Joliet Central currently offers a breakfast program at Central West and Pathways consisting of several choice entrees each day. Breakfast is served at Central and West from 6:30 a.m. to 8:15 a.m. and Pathways from 8 to 8:15 and 9 to 9:15. On average, during the last school year, we served about 762 breakfast meals daily. And this is up by over 150 over the 21-22 school year. And just note, 21-22 is when all students were free regardless of income. So we're up about 150 a day over the previous year, which is really good. I shared the reimbursement rates for the 23-24 school year in the board packet. Free breakfast meals get reimbursed. It went up 6 cents to $2.73. Reduced price meal reimbursement went up 6 cents to $2.43. And the paid meals decreased 12 cents. So they up to and took it from the third. Implementing the breakfast after the bell mandate would require the following additional expenses. We would need to purchase refrigerated coolers and kiosk carts to distribute the meals with milk, employ additional staff to prepare the bagged meals, stock the carts, and deliver the meals to every classroom or to kiosk carts stationed around each building, additional custodian resources during the day to empty garbage cans, clean up spills, would be necessary. Purchase wireless laptop computers and scanners to run the food service point of service sales software for each cart, plus the licensing. So mobile serving carts and kiosks with a food pan carrier for milk, a laptop, an ID scanner, the point of sale software, plus the licensing, probably on the low end would be about $4,500 to $5,000 a cart. And we would need for the central and the west campus, probably 16 to 18 of these carts. So there would be a substantial infrastructure investment to do this. Serving meals and allowing students to eat in class will cause a disruption. Time would have to be allotted to throw away garbage and clean up individual areas. Extra time would be needed for spills and other cleanups beyond the normal classroom activities. Serving meals in PE classes would interfere with the class. Instructional time is already lost, allowing students to change at the start of class and at the end of class. Serving meals from kiosks in specific locations would cause long lines during a 5-minute passing period. The hallways are already tight in certain areas around the campuses. The kiosks will require additional kitchen staff to distribute the breakfast and security during the serving time to issue late passes to students who were waiting for food. Adding extra time between periods 2 and 3 so every student can either go to a kiosk or go to the cafeteria to get their breakfast would affect the overall daily schedule. Each class period would need to be shortened or the school day longer. This would also require additional security for student supervision during the extended passing periods, since students not participating in breakfast would have nothing to do. JTHS begins serving lunch at 10:15 a.m. every day, which is only 60 minutes after the period 2 and 3 passing period. So due to circumstances, constraints specific to JTHS and our large campuses and student bodies, coupled with the implementation and maintenance costs of operating a breakfast after the bell program, I recommend the school district opt out of this mandate. So to opt out of the mandate, the district must do the following. Submit a cost analysis to the district's Board of Education indicating the reimbursements will not fully cover the cost of implementing and operating such a program. The District Board of Education must hold a public hearing, which we're doing today, and must post the date, time, and place, subject matter of the meeting on its website, and notify the ISBE by emailing at least 14 days prior to the hearing. If the District Board of Education passes a resolution that it is cost prohibitive to run and operate a breakfast after the bell program, the district submits the board resolution approving the breakfast after the bell exemption to the ISBE.
Thank you. There questions, comments?
Yeah, so this is something that I know we've been discussing since I first got on the board. I know it's, if we were to ever get into the community eligibility program, right, this is something that we would have to do, right? I believe it's part of it is that if you're doing the CEP program, you have to be part of the breakfast after the bell program as well. I know that you and Dr. Hampton were able to come up with some numbers for us before COVID, and then COVID happened, and everybody's been free the last couple of years anyway, so it's kind of a moot point as it was. And I know our numbers were close, because I think you can use multiple schools within a district. I think what Central is like 70% free and reduced. I know that West is below the threshold, but I think if you put them together, we were really close. And I think that was the concern, that if we went forward with it and the numbers went down, then where are we at putting this infrastructure in place? Also with House Bill 2471 passing, you know, and for those that don't know, that was passed by the Illinois General Assembly to essentially be a community eligibility program for all schools in Illinois, right? So it'll provide free food to all kids. Like usual, it's not funded at this point, so we have to see where that goes and where the funding is going to come from. But just kind of, you know, what are our next steps from there if we were to, you know, I don't know if this would have the same requirement, HB 2471, but I'm fairly certain with the CEP program, if we were to ever be a part of that, which I would love to see, I'd love to see all of our kids just get free breakfast and free lunch, you know, if there's a program out there for it, so. You speak a bit to that.
I can speak to that.
Awesome.
So I did a 40-minute conference call with the ISBE concerning us getting into the CEP and HB 2471.
Okay.
So obviously, it passed on August 11th, and then it was unfunded for the school year.
Right.
So they're hoping it gets funded for 24-25. To be part of HB 2471, your school has to be a CEP school first. So the next window for us to consider that option will be April 1st.
Okay.
So I uploaded all the students in the district. We got some preliminary numbers today. We are very close to meeting that minimal requirement.
Okay.
Based on April 1st of 2023, one of our schools, direct cert-wise, was about 38%, the other one was 25%, and one was a little bit into the 40s. So our district average was 32%, just a little bit over that. To get into the program, the minimum would be 40%.
Okay.
But based on my conversation today and the new student file upload, we're very close to that.
Okay.
So 40 is the minimum to get the cost and be, financially able to run your program. It needs to be closer to 55%. But we are definitely approaching that. Now, what HB 2471 does, when you upload your numbers, they will give us a calculation. We may be a 70-30 school. 70% of our kids would get funded at the highest level. 30% would get funded at the paid level.
Okay.
With HB 2471, if they fund it, the state will pick up that 30% that's reimbursed at the lower and reimburse it at schools at the higher rate.
Okay.
And that would be great.
So they're kind of making up the difference
They're
essentially?
gonna make up the difference.
Okay.
Their estimate is it might cost $200 million to do.
Right.
So we
Right.
need to see if they come together second semester and the appropriations are there. It's gonna be a costly program. But, based on my conversation today, they would pick up, if you're a 70-30, they'll pick up the 30%. Your federal reimbursements would still come from the 70.
Right. Thank you.
The other great thing about this is, as a result of this bill, the state now will basically update that information yearly.
Okay.
And then we could do it at any given time, but they are now following all of these numbers for every school district in the state. So we could at least get engaged yearly in
That'd be
terms
nice.
of where we are.
Yeah.
So that, we can send that report and things like that, so that then you're following it in terms of what's happening.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So I have a question, or a couple, and I'm sorry that I did not ask some of them prior, like, does anyone actually drink school milk anymore, and do we have to have those as part of the card? But anyway, those are little side questions. So I talk about food stamps sometimes and how I grew up on food stamps. And I talk about ACEs, adverse childhood experiences. And what I don't talk about, and I've learned a lot more of being a children's trauma therapist, is what it's like to be in the lower middle class. And I was talking to one of my best friends today, who happens to be my cousin. And when I was about 8 years old, after staying there the night, I went to eat breakfast, because in my house, we had food stamps, and we always had, until my mom relapsed, we always had breakfast and lunch and dinner. And I noticed there was no milk, because back then I drank milk. There was no cereal. There was nothing. And then I opened I looked down in the rest of the refrigerator, like, what's wrong here? And then I looked in their pantry, because they had one, and there was a few noodles in the bottom of one of those Tupperware containers. And I didn't stay the night there a lot, and I was just kind of like, okay, well now when we get together for holidays, we kind of talk about food and how fast everybody in my family eats. We talk about how my brothers and my sister, we happen to not be diabetic, none of us. We happen to not be pre-diabetic. But all my cousins, every single one of my cousins whose house I stayed the night at, either is pre-diabetic or is diabetic. Their mom worked. They had a stepdad that worked. They were part of the working poor. And when I think about just any time, like how I'm lucky enough to have health insurance, I'm lucky enough to have this great job, I think about how he says that they never had breakfast or lunch unless they were at school. And how a lot of times what they all figured out to do, and I want to thank all the parents and the teachers and staff who have kids at their house after school, is my cousin said he felt like he used his friends sometimes because he went there so he could have dinner. All of his brothers and his sisters did. And they would stay the night at people's houses so they could have breakfast. And I know it's a money thing, and I understand we have budgets, and people bash us every day for no matter what we vote on. We're spending too much, we're spending too much. Well, guess what? When you have the best and you want the best, you have to spend money. And we have really great people that know how to take our money and invest it wisely, and we have to spend it wisely, whether a mandate is funded or not funded. We have children that come to school every day in homes that don't have the adequate resources. And I just feel like any time we can make their burden lighter, we should try to do that. And for my cousin Robert, and Trisha, and Paulie, and Jason, and all the other kids at Joliet public schools that feed into us in Joliet Township, I think we should always do, even if it costs money, we should do what we need to do to make sure that they have the resources they need to learn every day, regardless of what that is. Thank you.
I just have a question. The other lunch that's provided, or breakfast that's provided for students that school buses might be late or they still are eligible for free breakfast, are they allowed to get breakfast before going to the classroom if the bus or they're dropped off late?
They can stop in the cafeteria.
They can stop in the cafeteria and there's no adverse consequence?
No.
Okay.
Do they have to stay in the cafeteria then and eat, or do they take that with them, or how does that work, Mr. Shaw?
That's a good question. I don't know if they're taking it with them or if they stay in there a couple of minutes and,
Okay.
and they eat.
Okay.
But yeah, they will stay open and they will feed kids. Yeah.
Any other questions, comments? May I have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mrs. Lynn?
Yes.
Mr. Fitzpatrick?
Yes.
Mr. Guerrero-Numero?
Yes.
Dr. Huntington?
Yes.
Mrs. Stiff?
Yes. The hearing is now closed.
Thank you. The next item under superintendent's reports is the site and master plan presentation. And so I'm going to turn over to Dr. Hampton. I know we have individuals here as well.
Yes, we have the architects and construction managers here. I think it was last winter, December, when the board approved for a long-range master planning assessment for the district. So architects have been working very hard. We've had tons of meetings between January and last week, basically putting this plan together. And I don't want to take from architects' thunder, but I do believe that everything that's in this plan is a culmination of all of the conversations we've had over the past 2 to 3 years. And I'll turn it over to the architects.
Thank you. Good to see everybody again. Once again, I'm Steve Shear with White & Company Architects. I'm joined with Dee Dee Shaw, also with White & Company. And in a moment, our partner David Norris with Gobain will join us as well. Very happy to present sort of the result of all the effort and planning we've been doing. I kind of like to remind everybody, just as a simple way of sort of use an analogy, is that what you have really is a roadmap for facility improvements for the foreseeable future. We like to use that analogy of a roadmap because it's meant to be dynamic, needs change, they evolve over time. So you can look at this as a roadmap of what to do in terms of your facility improvements, and more importantly, when to do them. These are big investments to take care of your facilities, so this plan ensures that there's a strategy behind that, and you're doing those with logic and an intent behind them. So as Dr. Hampton referenced, we started back at the end of the last calendar year. We really looked at the whole process in 3 phases, but you could really sum it down in 2. We started with what we called visioning and assessment. That's when we spent a lot of times at your schools. We were touring the schools, we were meeting with the end users, we were analyzing the school schedule, the capacity, we were doing traffic studies, and we'll highlight some of those efforts tonight and kind of relay sort of all the engagement we've had to date. The second part was when we started looking at the actual school plans and coming up with scenarios for improvements or possible areas of reorganization. We had multiple options that we discussed pros and cons with the steering committee. We did it right here in this room and in a workshop format. And the third phase is where we're at today. We're going to look for any refinement that needs to have to the final deliverable, and then as you adopt it, as you implement it over time for years to come. There's a lot of information in the report that you received of the complete master plan. A really simple way of looking at sort of the major components is just kind of 4 key ingredients. One is building capacity. So we spent a lot of time with data in terms of your school schedule, how rooms are being utilized, your projections, your current enrollment, and we're able to study just the number of teaching stations needed, and that was sort of a measure as we look to make improvements that we were keeping the capacity of teaching stations intact. The second one is the physical conditions of the building. This is the nuts and bolts of how well your mechanical systems are running, or when, more importantly, when they're due for replacement or repair, and even just the physical conditions, flooring, ceiling, things like that. The third is what we call educational alignment, and that's really what we dug in with the end users and the steering committee in terms of how well the facilities align to your educational goals and what improvements need to be made to improve the environment for the teaching and learning that you want to happen at Joliet Township. And it's important that we look at 2 and 3 together, because essentially this sort of puts the strategy behind it. You don't want to update mechanical systems for a space that you know is no longer going to serve your needs. Likewise, you don't want to renovate a classroom and then have to tear out the mechanical system 2 years later. So this whole plan sort of marries those 2 components together. And the fourth is the district priorities. When we met with the user groups, there was a lot of references back to your strategic plan. In fact, facilities is a subcomponent of your strategic plan. But that sort of helps us form the goals and recommendations that are in this master plan in terms of your facilities. And then specific to that educational alignment piece, there's just 3 lenses we looked at. You can almost kind of look at it as like a macro, micro, and even sort of specific kind of lens. But we looked at the overall campus context. Now, obviously, your buildings are your buildings. We're not moving high schools. But we did look at things like site logistics and safety. We're going to highlight some traffic studies here. Central, for instance, it's very much more campus-like in terms of it has multiple buildings on one site that are connected in limited ways. So we looked at the overall campus context, that's sort of the macro lens. And then we looked at how each individual school building is organized in terms of how certain departments are or not kind of close together, how collaboration happens, where the common areas of buildings that students could go that's not just a hallway or a classroom. And then we specifically looked at, certain learning spaces, or these came up in our conversations with the user groups, that there's just certain spaces that are in need. The culinary project that we presented last month are a perfect example of that. Those spaces are just due for an update so that the curriculum that you want to deliver could happen in those spaces.
So who are the project stakeholders and who do we engage with to get this master plan to align to your priorities? So the first was you, Board of Education. We met with you last fall to approve this, to move forward with the planning, and you guys will be the ones to adopt the master plan. The other part is a steering committee. This was a group of 12 individuals from the administration we met with periodically throughout the last 9 months. They really guided us for the plan recommendations and looked at, all the specific items, and everything kind of went through that group to finalize approval. The final part is a user group. So we met with both campuses, all the different departments, including AVAC, Pathways, and every department, to get their feedback about what's happening at your schools, because they're the ones who are there every day and really taking a look at what their input is. And how, what was the process to get all this done? You can see the blue to the green. We spent 9 months on this project. We had 5 steering committee workshops over that time. We had 20 user group meetings, 3 staff presentations. We visited the site in terms of architecture and engineering 10 times, and we had 9 months of planning and assessment. And then the final result is this 250-page report that we will summarize in this tonight. So just so you know how it's organized, we have 3 volumes. The first volume is volume 1, which is an executive summary. This is an overview of both campuses and the district priorities throughout both schools. And then we dig into each campus. So volume 2 is Joliet West High School, and volume 3 is Joliet Central. We go over kind of the bones of the buildings, what's there right now, the physical condition assessment, where we analyze all the systems in the building, the educational alignment for each school, and then we go into our recommendations, including planning solutions, how we're phasing it and implementing this, as well as the budgets. One part of the assessment is the physical condition assessment. We went to all 3 campuses, our land development team, building interiors, architecture, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and fire protection, and we analyzed your buildings. So we walk through, and what we end up having is this, on the top left, you see this chart, and we say kind of what's the condition of each piece. So we say, what's replacement year? So 4 is 0 to 2, fair is 3 to 5, and good is 5 to 10, and then excellent is it's in good shape. You just need to make sure it's maintained. We do it per area, so this is an example of Joliet West, so we kind of key into each area based on when it was built, and we have some images as well. So you can dig into each volume 2 and 3. There's lots and lots of pages of these charts for each area and each system. We dive into each mechanical system, each electrical system. Is very detailed, so you want to dig in there and go into that actual plan. So we'll go over kind of the overall, what we found at West and Central. There you go. So this is West, and something happened with these plans, but if you look at what's going on, we had, red, there's a lot of red, and we looked at this in terms of a holistic approach, not just architecture, but in terms of mechanical systems and electrical systems. If you look at your red and yellow, these are really the oldest parts of your building. So, and the district really knows that some of these need to be updated. We did do a mechanical indoor air quality project that we started a few years ago. So we've been updating our mechanical systems in the last 4 years. We do have a final phase next summer to update 8 of these rooms in the spread area on the 2nd floor. Also, the facilities team has been updating these as we go. We know they've been doing flooring projects. They have some slated. They did some this past year. They're doing some next year. We will keep the poor and the fair into account when we do the full master planning. And we're not just taking a look at when we shift around for your priorities for educational alignment. This will be taken into account when we do the planning. So it's like Steve said, we're not, doing work that we're going to tear out, and vice versa. This is Central. We split Central up by area as well, so each area is per where it was built. As you can see, your T&I building is, in the red. That's an original building built in the 1950s. We've already been starting to do work in this building as well. You saw there's structural improvements happen this summer. You're getting roofing next year, so that has already been kind of implemented. And then your yellow areas are your very it's a 1900, built in 1900, so we know it needs some work. You guys did do a lot of work in 2008. You put a mechanical system in. That was a big project, which is why you don't have as much red as West. Also, much like West, we've done indoor air quality projects the last few years, so all your mechanical systems are updated. And you've been doing flooring every year, so you do 4 or 5 classrooms where you see the need. So your staff has been doing a really good job keeping up these buildings. This is just to help guide this master plan and reinforce what they've been doing.
And then when we kind of look at that lens of educational alignment in terms of how well the buildings are supporting what the district wants to do educationally, there were some common goals that emerged from all those meetings we had with the steering committee and with the end users. The first one being, promote collaboration. We want teachers and students to be more collaborative. And sometimes that regards thinking about, is there opportunities that actually classroom curriculum could be reorganized in the school where departments are together to foster that collaboration rather than being distributed throughout the building. And then along with getting departments and like-minded curriculum together in the building, is there also a way just to create these kind of centers for, I'm going to say, collaboration and resource. This could be academic resource for the students. It could be professional working space for teachers to collaborate. It could be resources like staff bathrooms that we heard a lot about, and mother's room throughout the building, group rooms throughout the building. So making sure, in addition to getting the classrooms and the right adjacencies we want, we also want to make sure that we have proper space for just resources and collaboration that isn't just a classroom. And then ultimately, with all the capacity study we did, we want to better align between the number of classrooms that are at each campus and the number of teachers. And that really came out of the capacity and utilization studies we've done. And so a lot of the moves that are being made in terms of to reach these goals also gain classrooms. So at the end, right now, where the master plan sits, if it's implemented to its extent, you could almost think a dozen classrooms at each campus would be gained. And these are core classrooms, not like fitness spaces or anything. The second one is, we want to enhance the student experience. We heard a lot of examples of maybe some congestion in the hallways or wayfinding throughout the building, or student being able to get from one end of the building to another in a timely fashion. So in what ways can we, increase or make the circulation and flow between each building better so that student experience is better of navigating the building and getting from class to class. And then the last one, the idea of flexibility and adaptability from master plan is key. In what ways can we think about the building to make it adaptable for evolving needs, change in enrollment that might be different 10 years from now. So this idea of how furniture could be flexible, the use of classrooms could be flexible, that was a common theme that came up, which ultimately led to sort of 3 overarching recommendations. One is, how can we look at making strategic moves that allows you the opportunity to organize classrooms by department? So we could say there's areas of buildings that are housed for a specific department with the proper resources and collaborations nearby. The second recommendation, and you'll see this when we go through the specific strategy at each school, is there's different ways that we could improve circulation at both campuses, offer a relief valve to some of that congestion that's happening in the hallway. And then the last one, of course, is the maintenance and health and life safety. If we do any of these improvements, we're going to make sure we fix the buildings where they need to be fixed at the same time, too. So we're addressing all the needs, both the building infrastructure and some of these educational alignment pieces. Traffic study.
So our recommendations. So as Steve stated, we did a traffic study as part of this master plan. We had Kayla, and if you go into the report in the appendix, that really specifies 200 cars turn right into the parking lot at this location. So it's that specific, and that's the data we had at both campuses. The second part is parking. They went through and at West, they looked at all the parking lots. They counted how many cars were there after drop off and then right before pickup. So we have really key times that you have the most amount of parking. So they did that as well on West for the adjacent street areas and the main parking lots, and at Central, all your parking lots. So this is West. The total parking you are at about 80% capacity on that day that they found of how many spots are being used. We've heard a lot about capacity at West and really finding more parking. So that was one of the things we did look at when we looked at the strategy. The other part is West. A lot of people talk about Joliet West and getting in and out of the crazy times, picking up and dropping off. And we saw all the footage, and they walked, and they were like, there's a lot of congestion because in this main parking lot that you come into, you have parents, students, and buses all kind of congested in one area. So we really wanted to separate as much as we could. So the first part of that is the buses. If you look at this plan, the green arrows represent the bus routes. Right now, you do come out, you have buses on the main parking lot, and also you have smaller buses on the southeast parking lot. We are proposing to expand the administration parking lot, which would increase parking, and also widen that in and out, because right now only one car can get in and out of that administration parking lot. So we can get buses in and out, and you can have a third space to pick up and drop off students, which would not only alleviate congestion outside, but inside the building when students come in and come out, they have different points of exit and entry. So that was the first part of that project. The next part is your main lot. How do we separate all of these three different people using the parking lot? So we have one route for the buses, that's in green, kind of coming south towards the field house and out the two east areas of Glenwood. Then we have parents. We're trying to pull the parents that's the blue arrows, off of Glenwood. So we're pulling them south and getting a loop in there so they're not queuing up on Glenwood and blocking traffic. So they'll circulate through the parking lot there and come out. We're proposing to expand that furthest west drive cut. So there's 3 lanes now, so you can come in and then you can turn left or right out. So we're not getting stuck behind people trying to turn left. And the last part is the pedestrians. So students come from Hello My Friend. We are proposing adding a actual designated pedestrian path through the parking lot so they're not just walking wherever they want. We took care of a little bit of this for the athletic improvements. We did add a sidewalk right north of that plaza, so students can walk that way if they're coming through that sidewalk, but this will also have a second area for them to walk. And that also helps us separate the parking area from the parent-student drop-off. So overall, this adds, I can't read that, but it's about 30 spots in the main lot and 56 spots in administration lot. So you get about 85 spots from this change. So Central, we did the same exercise at Central. Parking-wise, you're only at about 50% capacity. So Central, you have plenty of parking. You have a lot of lots, that gravel lot. Even when we did the athletic improvements, we weren't using that lot, and you still had enough parking for all your students. So we don't really have an issue with how much parking you have, maybe how it's designated for visitors can be redesignated, but we have ample parking. The buses, which are shown in green, we kind of took a look at that when we did the 2017 Student Center. The buses are already kind of coming from Cass South on Herkimer, and then they have their own lane that they go to a light to turn left or right on Collins. That seems to be working well. We didn't have any issues with that, so we kind of left that alone. The parents are really where we've been having issues on Collins, especially with the curve, getting them in and out. So the first part kind of already happened because over this past summer, the city of Joliet removed all your parking islands on Eastern. So that added a lane basically, so you can queue up more parents. The other small item that we did was we moved the student entry from the south area, from the auditorium area to the south of the field house. And that added a lot of queuing so that parents aren't just stopping very south on Eastern. And I believe when we've spoken to people that's already kind of helped. The other part is for the turnabout at the main entrance is to add a left turn lane and right turn lane out. So parents are not stuck behind someone to try to get out, and we can keep circulating people in and out. And that was kind of the main big change that we made. Unlike West, where we have a lot of logistics, adding one turn lane here will really make a big difference. So those were the 2 items for the outside of the building for the traffic.
So now we wanted just to highlight some of the signature targeted improvements at each campus, starting with the West Campus. So anything you see in green are targeted areas of comprehensive renovation. Areas in red are targeted areas for future expansion. And they're all done with purpose. And the areas in blue are also areas of renovation, but that's more about those collaborative resource areas throughout the campus. So some of that intention around where we could possibly expand or what areas we renovate are really driven from those common goals. One of them being just circulation and efficiency and improving the student experience. So these additions are targeted in such a way that gets another north-south access in the campus, which will go a long way to easing the flow and the wayfinding throughout the building. And it's one that's done without any of the signature jogs. If you're familiar with the West Campus, there's a lot of jogging through the hallways too. And the other is, we've heard a lot about the two main corridors in the B building. That's, there's a lot of pain points of congestion, especially at hallway intersections. So we're actually planning any future expansions to create a third east-west access throughout the building, just to ease that congestion and make it easier for students to navigate. And part of thinking about how culinary fits into this master plan, you know, you can think about the culinary addition as the starting phase of making that east-west connection. And so part of that connection is the culinary, which we already reviewed last month, but then also a future science addition that would continue that east-west access. And we targeted science because then it gets all the science labs adjacent to the existing labs that are already present. The other area, and this is true of both campuses, is you know, we want to consolidate the resources for student services, PPS, special ed, all in one location. Right now at West, they're split between floors. Some certain components are actually in other academic buildings. So we want to target a way of really consolidating those resources together. And in this case, doing it in a way that's not too far from the visitor entry. So any visitors that need to meet with those staff members don't have to go too far into the building, and they can leverage a lot of the conference spaces that are happening at the beginning of the building. The third piece is leveraging an existing courtyard for a future student center. And this is, in many ways, a hardworking, multi-function space that does a number of things. One, it's sort of that relief valve for students navigating through these hallways, so they could actually get from both floors through the student center, not too much unlike central campuses. And then around that, creating a variety of multi-purpose spaces for students and teachers. This is part of that flexibility and adaptability that the campus could offer, and also planning for any student resources to be adjacent to that student center. Things like a credit union or the health nurse. So any student need could be accessed from that future student center. And then part of that planning displaces a lot of old classrooms that are currently used for applied life. In this case, that would be in a more dedicated, purposeful addition with the rest of the applied life gymnasium spaces too. And then on the second floor, it's just a kind of a continuation of those future additions, just to create those links and create those kind of common hubs. And then you could also see the areas in blue that we're earmarking for centrally distributed resource areas. They haven't been designed yet, but they've been planned for and earmarked, so we make sure we have space in there for professional development, for staff restrooms, for academic resource, and the like. Uh-oh, might have broke it.
Here it is.
Oh, okay. So this is really quickly just an existing use diagram of Joliet West. So all the departments are listed on the right. You don't necessarily have to read them because you can kind of see by the way the color's distributed how certain departments are distributed throughout the building. You have math spaces predominantly in performing arts spaces, science spaces predominantly in the CTE space. So in the end, as we look about the master plan, we're trying to thanks. Yeah, please.
Just point and then.
Yeah.
Is it not going?
It froze. It locked up. But you'll see how the master plan lends itself to better organization of departments, and then how that wayfinding sort of throughout the building gets better too. So these next series of plans are probably over-detailed right now, but it just kind of shows us the accounting and capacity study we did and the adjacency studies we've done to make sure that these moves fit within the overall goals of the district.
Well, I guess while we're waiting, yeah, no, I really appreciate how you guys have been able to take like small little additions for us to move, you know, like you said, applied life to get them over where most of them are supposed to be. But then that frees up classrooms, right? Like I like how you guys are really looking at this in a way where we can make small tweaks that make big differences. So thank you for that.
Sure, thank you.
Will we get hallways, more hallways?
That's,
That's west.
West, right over by where the culinary's at.
Yep.
That'll give us another good
Yep.
east-west. Yeah, once they get done with the science section, it looks like it'll give good access in B building. We haven't even seen Central yet, so I'm excited.
What number was it? Yeah, around 20. Yes, thank you very much. Spinning wheel.
It's too big.
It is a big file.
It is a big file. Maybe just a.
Thank you, Shad.
Way to be a team player, Mr. Callahan.
Thank you.
We'll give you that award that you claim that you never got at this point, Mr. Callahan.
I could start talking about the strategies at Central, but of what we know, I know you have local copies too. So the next slides they were just like a before and after, so you can compare like the usage before and ultimately the master plan is implemented after. And then we'll segue over to Central's campus. Same common goals, you know, there's same pain points in terms of where congestion happened. Specific to the Central campus was the fact that there are multiple buildings that students use and very limited access to get to those buildings. It's pretty much one hallway on one floor. So a lot of challenges in terms of limiting students to that hallway. There's congestion at those hallways, or the alternative is students are going outside, and that poses a new set of challenges. So one of the strategic moves we're doing here is creating a link between the main academic building, the annexed classroom building, and then even the T&I building. A link that connects both floors to all three buildings, and one that also includes some additional academic space. You know, there's utilities that need to be relocated to make this move. So if we're gonna go ahead and move those utilities, let's make that link more purposeful. So we get some additional academic classroom space in that link as well. At both campuses, T&I and CTE were also a big part of the conversations we've had. So we identified those as areas of targeted renovation. Just like culinary, there was a lot of excitement about these career pathways where students are making things and doing things. So there's some opportunity to, I think, share resources among those programs. You know, things like auto and engineering, those are very storage intensive. If we could renovate those areas to not only make the teaching space more effective, but also just maximize the resources that and infrastructure that those spaces need. And at Central Campus, what's unique about there is all those labs are interconnected without any central hallway. So students are walking from one lab to through the next to get to one. So in that targeted renovation, we make sure there's proper hallway circulation so students could get to each individual lab without having to walk through another space as well.
There we go.
It all happened when I dropped the clicker, that's when.
Maybe we can just go from the,
Yeah.
We can get from the Dr. website.
Yep.
Keep going, keep going.
we'll just have to move it along for you. 'cause I
Yeah,
don't think it
so in the
will-
next, so this was sort of, if a fully implemented master plan, you could see how the departments lend themselves to better organization, either by building, by wing. And really, becomes like a scheduling exercise, but things like science labs, we want to make sure are together, because those are more infrastructure intensive. And then just a little side note, we also targeted those areas in deeper red, or special ed spaces and special ed resource rooms. We want to make sure those are distributed among the departments and not just in one area of the building, just to create a more inclusive kind of use of the classrooms in those spaces. And then the next slide, you'll see the existing second floor. Kind of, you see the distribution of departments here, and then in the future proposed, having the ability to schedule classes in a more departmental organization, with those distributed special ed with their respective departments as well. Great, thanks. So at Central Campus, here's where you see highlighted in red that link we talked about between the annex building and the main campus. CTE being one of those targeted renovations, just to make those labs not only up to date with the curriculum that wants to be delivered there, but with proper hallway circulation. And then also consolidating PPS and student services. This is where the majority of those functions live in the campus, and we heard those that's a good central location. But where can we expand across the hall and to get all those functions together, or at least nearby one another, so they could collaborate better? Some targeted performing arts improvements in the existing spaces. And then moving up to the third floor, we highlighted the culinary project that we presented last month. And then again, those areas in blue are spaces that are either centrally located, like near the top of stairs, or where students predominantly see them. Those are our future academic resource spaces and collaboration hubs throughout the building. And then on the fourth floor, in the existing, or in the former cafeteria, that's where we targeted a new science center. That's a way of getting the science labs all together, more adjacent, and it just could be new labs that then frees up classroom spaces on floors 1 and 2. So just quick before and afters about how classrooms are distributed to how they can be distributed once the master plan is implemented. Again, these are very detailed plans in terms of number of classrooms, but that's just kind of the background information we went with, just to make sure that we had all the spaces accounted for as we kind of make these signature moves. Ending on the fourth floor with new science, where the former cafeteria is.
So I noticed that there was space for like the school credit union and things like that. Was there any consideration to space that could be utilized for vocational programming for students with special needs? So small classrooms are good for special ed classrooms, but bigger kind of needs in work experience and work development type programs for students with special needs. Was there any consideration into things like that?
We heard a lot of programs in the CTE that I think it's AMPed was one of the programs that's sort of new. That was folded into making sure we have space for that program to exist. Some newer programs like geometry and construction, which doesn't currently have a lab space, but accounting for that.
But yeah, I can answer too, but yeah, there were conversations with Chris McGuffey and Jamila. That was part of our core team to, we talked about giving special ed students those experiences. So as we start to restructure these spaces, we'll start to identify where those classes can be located.
I think I was referring more to opportunities that are not like classroom related. So things like work experience, vocational areas, book rooms, coffee shops, those kind of things that could be embedded into the program and allow for specific training for students with more significant needs.
Yeah, that's a little bit different, but however, prior to COVID, we started some of that, and where we were utilizing students in the bookstore and in the cafeteria. And so we plan to bring that back, you know, but those are the conversations that I know Diane and Jamila are having, so the students can have those experiences within the district. Yeah, they would even come over to district office sometimes and do different things also.
And I think at Central, correct me if I'm wrong, I think they do run a coffee shop, don't they? The kids.
On a coffee program
A
at
coffee
both
program.
campuses.
Okay.
The, I think it's every Wednesday at West Campus. So they take orders and then they come over and they serve it at West Campus. And then I want to say at Central, it's 2 days a week, maybe 3 days a week. Is it 5 now?
Yeah.
What are you kind of more talking about, more targeted towards like our AVAC program? Because I know with our transition program, we did, like, we all toured it. They got a lot of nice new, like the industrial kitchen.
No, and
I used
that's a
to-
specific space for kids in an 18 to 22-year-old
Right.
program. So there's pre-vocational programming and skills that you can put in place for students. So perhaps not every student needs to go to transition. If they can learn those skills while they're still in high school, they can
Okay.
exit out. So looking at opportunities in the school environment that replicate and really are more like business type work experiences. So a coffee cart is great, they get a little experience with customer service, but usually there's not a lot of customers, right? How many, Keurig cups of coffee does one want to spend, right? So looking at opportunities to use some of the equipment that you might see at McDonald's and be able to provide that service not only to the students learning those skills, but also it creates a nice opportunity and some culture building that could happen in a school building as well. So I was just curious to see if, some of these spaces are amazing, like looking off of the student center like that, could you build in?
I think that's a great discussion to have about the student center. Could those be some of the functions that could possibly be around it? Yeah.
Yeah.
We haven't specifically designed every single space.
Oh, no, I get that, I get that completely.
Something that's great to think about when we
Yeah.
look at the spaces
That
in more detail.
could also be part of the CTE discussion too, when we renovate that space as well.
Oh, yeah, where were we? Yeah, keep going. Oh, it's working. Yeah. Started working?
Yep. So the next step we took is how do we make this happen while you're still using your buildings? In a way that,
Yeah.
in the way that, thinks about the district priorities, is flexible, so it can, it's a guideline and can change. Like we said, this is a roadmap, but gives you a good guide of how we can do this. So we worked with Dr. Hampton to phase both schools. This is very detailed in the master plan document. I won't go over every single one, but this is an overview. So just so you know, one aspect is kind of the goals and recommendations. We also took into account what's in the physical condition assessment, and kind of when we touch a space, we're touching everything that's in the physical condition assessment, as well as reorganizing. So I'll go through the first 3 or 4 phases, and then we can you can take a look in the actual book. So phase 1 is really about exterior circulation at both campuses, so parking lot upgrades at West, and adding that turn lane to your pickup and drop off at Central. Phase 2 is about the circulation within the building. So at Joliet West, that's adding that north-south corridor that's next to the new student commons in the future. And at Joliet Central, it's adding these 2 links to connect the main building to Smith and Smith to T&I. You see a lot of things that are happening in phase 2 for Central. There's a lot of components that are moving. There's some other elements such as moving administration and making sure those old administration spaces get turned into classrooms. That's part of our departmental reorganization of your building. Phase 3 is about PPS and administration. So this helps us pull, your PPS program's been growing. We need more space, as well as your administration. We want to centrally locate them. This will help free up space throughout the rest of the campus, so you can put your classrooms and departments in those locations. So that's phase 3 for both schools. Phase 4 is really about the student commons to create equity between the 2 schools, create this great hub at West, and wrapping up the T&I building and making sure we update that building entirely. And then the last 4 phases are in there based on priority, but a lot of these things can move around. If you look, and you can, when you have the book, it says in red, those we show what affects other phases. So we really looked at what we need to do in order, so we're not going backtracking and having to, reduce spaces. So this is really a domino effect. It's a Swiss watch. We need to make sure when we do all these pieces, we're taking into account all the different elements. But there are some items, such as 3rd floor renovations in phase 5 at Central, that can move up and down, because we know your district priorities might change in 5 years. We saw what happened with COVID. That changed a lot of things. So we want to have a flexible phasing diagram. Now we'll hand it over to David to look at our best part.
Thank you. Did you turn? Okay, another spreadsheet that nobody can see. So what we've done is, I'll go through how we organize the budgeting, the very conceptual budgeting at this level of design. And so we broke our budget out into the phases. They're color-coded, so they match the phasing description and the phasing that's located on the plan. And it's very similar to when we were here last month and presented the preliminary budgeting for culinary, where we have each phase is broken into the project subtotal of construction, which is really your trade cost, your bricks and mortar type costs, and then below that we're carrying 3 levels of contingency escalation, which we typically are, right now we're estimating about 4%. We carry it per year, and we carry it to the midpoint of construction. And then we have a design contingency. So we have that in place because there's really not design at this level. It's very conceptual. And then we have the construction contingency, which is in place. We'll continue to carry that all the way through construction. Then we have a total construction dollar amount. And then below that, we have what we call owner's costs. So that's your management fees, insurance. In some cases where you have an addition, you will have what we call FF&E, furniture, fixtures, and equipment. And then professional services, any inspections, anything that's necessary to build the building, but not necessarily bricks and mortar. So as we break that through each phase, you can also see, as you see this, you'll see that escalation starts really increasing because we're making a call on how far out these phases go. Some phases have multiple projects, some phases only have 1 project. That affects how you look at the costs. This is a summary level, just like the architect has a bigger report. We have can't remember how many pages, I think it's in the 70 or 80 page budget summary that feeds all of the detailed information of how we budgeted for this level of design into this 1 sheet. Below the boxes, we're carrying 2 additional costs. One is the infrastructure that Needy talked about, and then the other one is roofing, and that's there to capture things that may be outside of the renovation. If we are going into a space to renovate, we're addressing the infrastructure in those costs, but there's infrastructure of mechanical equipment that once it hits its useful lifespan, then we're carrying dollars in infrastructure to replace that. Roofing's the same way. As your roofings age and come out of warranty, at some point in the future, you'll have a re-roofing project. And so that's what that roofing dollar's for. Some of the roofing would be addressed possibly in the renovation portion, but if it's outside of the renovation budget in the phasing, then we're carrying the separate roofing costs. Any questions on?
On that part? No.
Or in any part.
Put up the common goals again.
I'd really like anybody who's been to Central, worked at Central, done anything at Central, that T&I, the bridge, is a point of pain, as you said. But the one thing I really liked is how it looks like you guys expanded it out and were able to put classrooms and stuff along the way too. So it's not just like, oh, we added another throughway underneath. I really like that there's an expansion there to add even more stuff for our kids. So thank you for that.
So a benefit of having a superintendent who has children at our schools and at both schools is when you call her and you say, have you been to Central and have you tried to get in there lately? And blah, blah, blah. And she says, and she listens to your concerns. She's had the same concerns, and then she says, and now I want you to go to West, and this is why we're working on this. And this has been something that she's been, worried about and knowing about, and so it's really great that you're, it's a concern of parents and teachers and students across our city. So we're just grateful that you really spent all of this time and took in all of our community stakeholders' opinions and thoughts and ideas, and you're continuing to do that. And that it's a big deal, and it's safety, so thank you.
So I know you have everything outlined by phases. I was looking for projection of time. How are we looking?
So I think I'll answer that one, right?
Time?
So the last time we conducted a plan like this was about 20 years ago. And it takes time and money, right? So, truly, we're going to be looking at a 10 to 15 year, 20-year type of plan. Unlike some of the renovations or additions we did last time, there was a referendum involved. This time, we're not talking a referendum, so we're speaking of our bonding capacity and our operations and maintenance fund and construction fund, and a combination of those things. So I've already started collaborating with Elizabeth Hennessy, who assists us with our bonds. We start putting a plan together, and again, it's just going to be time, but we'll have a plan in terms of how this could go over the next 10 to 15 to 20 years. Prior to probably the last 4 years, it was projects almost every 2 to 3 years. So as you gain bonding capacity, you did projects. So it's going to be kind of phased like that. There may be some smaller things that we can do through our operations and maintenance fund, but some of the larger things that you're seeing, that's 35, 45 million, they're going to be planned out. I will say right now, we could more than likely accomplish through phase 3 what we currently have. So that's a presentation I'll be bringing forth to the board, because we'll have to have resolutions to start to transfer money to the construction fund and those types of things. So I do plan to present that probably sometime in November, so we can start that process and get the plan started. That's a great question, but it just is, it's just time and money.
I know that there are some construction grants and
Yes.
funds like that. Are
Yeah.
we hiring somebody to go out there and look for those grants, or is that going to be done internally?
Well, a lot of times with those construction grants, they're not for existing projects. Those types of construction grants are for specific things that this company or this organization may want you to have in your district, right? So CT, for example, we always look for grants or partnerships where they can come in and maybe assist with renovating a space or providing the supplies or the equipment, things like that. So we do look for those type of partnerships where we can do those things versus, a construction grant, they want you to do it this way and only this way. So we do look for those also. I want to thank White and Company and Gilbert and Company for excellent leadership and through this endeavor. It's been a great process. I do believe, again, that it captures all the conversations we have from the board to administration to our teachers, to our community, to our students. So now it's just a matter of coming up with a funding plan and starting the implementation process. So I want to thank you all again. I do appreciate it.
Thank you. So then our last report is the 10-day count, and it is in your board packet, and Mrs. McDonald or myself would be happy to answer any questions. The only thing I want to point out when you're looking at the 10-day count, transition is pulled out. It was always embedded into central in the past, and so we pulled it out in this 10-day count to just monitor that. So it was the students were accounted for, but. It was just separated. Yes, and we just think this is a better way so we can monitor it.
Thank you, Dr. Guzman. We'll now go to action items. We have a hearing for 2023-24 budget. May I have a motion to open a public hearing for the budget?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Dr. Huntington?
Yes.
Mrs. Stiff?
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Fitzpatrick?
Yes.
Mrs. Lynn?
Yes.
Mrs. Guerrero-Numer?
Yes.
Are there any questions or comments? No? Okay. Motion to close public hearing.
So moved. Second.
Roll call.
Mrs. Guerrero-Numer?
Yes.
Dr. Huntington?
Yes.
Mrs. Stiff?
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Fitzpatrick?
Yes.
Mrs. Lynn?
Yes.
The hearing is now closed. Action item B, approval, I can't see, of the 2023-24 budget. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Questions, comments? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Lynn?
Yes.
Mrs. Guerrero-Numer?
Yes.
Dr. Huntington?
Yes.
Mrs. Stiff?
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Fitzpatrick?
Yes.
Action item C, intergovernmental agreement between Governing Board of Lincoln Way Area Special Education Joint Agreement District 843 and Board of Education of Joliet Township High School District 204. May I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Questions, comments? Roll call, please.
Mr. Fitzpatrick?
Yes.
Mrs. Lynn?
Yes.
Mrs. Guerrero-Numer?
Yes.
Dr. Huntington?
Yes.
Mrs. Stiff?
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Action item D, intergovernmental transportation agreement for Rockdale District 84. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Questions, comments?
Yes, I was going to say a comment. I work for a different local school district, and we actually just played Rockdale in baseball, and I see a Joliet Township High School bus come pulling up. I just think that it's great that we offer this to, one of our feeder schools to allow the kids to participate in things. We don't have transportation for our sports, and it becomes more difficult. So anything we can do to help facilitate kids getting involved, I think is great.
That's what I was gonna ask, is it just extracurriculars? It's not their regular transportation routes?
No, it's for the regular and special ed.
Athletics, regular, and
Yeah.
education.
And with our bus driver shortage, is it just the timing where they're not taking drivers that could be running our routes, they're doing it at different hours?
Yeah, we coordinate. We've been providing transportation over 25 years to Rockdale. And it's like maybe 1 or 2 routes. It's not significant. So we coordinate their times to make sure that we can get their students transported. Even during the shortage, yes.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mrs. Lynn?
Yes.
Mr. Fitzpatrick?
Yes.
Mrs. Guerrero-Nomare?
Yes.
Dr. Huntington?
Yes.
Mrs. Stiff?
Yes. Action item E, MOU with NAMI Will Grundy for ending the silence curriculum. May I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Questions, comments?
I just want, go ahead. Somebody. I just want to say, love NAMI, it's the National Alliance for the Mentally Ill, Will Grundy, and there's such stigma attached to mental illness, and when you look again at ACEs and violence, that often, they're comorbid, so I just think it's awesome that we're always looking for other ways to help our students and their families. Shout out to Terry King, who I did my first NAMI walk with, and NAMI's a group that helped my family as well. So really awesome at MOU.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Stiff?
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Fitzpatrick?
Yes.
Mrs. Lynn?
Yes.
Mrs. Guerrero-Nomare?
Yes.
Dr. Huntington?
Action item F, Southern Will County Cooperative for Special Education Agreement. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Questions, comments?
Yes, this is a recommendation to approve, to provide breakfast and lunch meals for the Southern Will County Cooperative for Special Education. We've provided this service for SOWIC for over 14 years. We essentially prepare the meals, but they pick up the meals from Joliet West.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Stiff?
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Fitzpatrick?
Yes.
Mrs. Lynn?
Yes.
Mrs. Guerrero-Nomare?
Yes.
Dr. Huntington?
Yes.
Action item G, fiscal year '23 administrator and teacher salary benefit report. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Questions, comments?
Yes.
This is the report that's mandated to go up on the
Yes.
website.
Yeah, this is mandated by school code. The administrator and teacher salary benefit report, and the second one that you approve is the Public Act 970609, which are non-certified staff, and both have to be posted on the website.
Roll call, please.
Dr. Huntington?
Yes.
Mrs. Stiff?
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Fitzpatrick?
Yes.
Mrs. Lynn?
Yes.
Mrs. Guerrero-Nomare?
Yes.
We did. No, we didn't. Oh, okay, yes. Action item H, Public Act 97-0609 report, policy 2.250. May I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Questions, comments? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Guerrero-Nomare?
Yes.
Dr. Huntington?
Yes.
Mrs. Stiff?
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Fitzpatrick?
Yes.
Mrs. Lynn?
Yes.
Action item I, to approve donations.
So moved.
Second.
Questions, comments?
Nope. Just want to thank Mr. Terry Morris, Minor Morris Funeral Home, and North Central College Bands. Those were the 3 that were donating to us. Very much appreciated.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Lynn?
Yes.
Mrs. Guerrero-Nomare?
Yes.
Dr. Huntington?
Yes.
Mrs. Stiff?
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Fitzpatrick?
Yep. Action item J, personnel reports 1 through 13. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Can I ask that we pull number, professional staff additional assignment recommendations and vote on it separately?
Number 4.
Thank you.
Perfect. So I propose a motion 1 through 3 and then 5 through 13 for action item J at this time.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Fitzpatrick?
Yes.
Mrs. Lynn?
Yes.
Mrs. Guerrero-Numer?
Yes.
Dr. Huntington?
Yes.
Mrs. Stiff?
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy?
Yes. I propose a motion for action item J, line item 4.
I'll make the motion.
No. Second. A second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mrs. Lynn?
Yes.
Mr. Fitzpatrick?
Yes.
Mrs. Guerrero-Numer?
Yes.
Dr. Huntington?
Abstain?
Mr. Coffey? Oops, I'm sorry. Mrs. Stiff?
Yes.
Thank you.
Unfinished business. Do we have any? Nope. New business. Do we have any board reports?
Yeah, I went to the JT Booster outing. I saw Dr. Hampton there as well. It's probably one of my favorite events to attend. You know, it helps our athletic programs, you know, at West and Central both. Tanya was there passing out all the goodies, so.
I was.
It was a very well-run event, very enjoyable time, you know, and it's great to see all the support for the district.
We appreciate it, and on behalf of the boosters, we almost did $10,000, so thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I attended the 2.2 Special Services Focus Group. I believe Mrs. Stiff was also there. We reviewed current programs at JTHS and the significant numbers of students having to receive services outside of the district, discussed area of needs, and set an agenda to look at data for our next meeting, which is on the 26th.
Yes. Thank you.
Can I say happy Hispanic Heritage Month? I don't know if everyone knows this, but it goes like from 15th to the 15th, middle to the middle of October. And I have some awesome mentors that were involved at JTHS. I won't name them, but I also say thank you to all my friends that are teachers and counselors and social workers and all the bilingual folks out there and just everyone that celebrates our Latinx, Latino, Latina students. We appreciate you every day, even those folks that are not any of those groups. And also, just want to say next month is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And so just to get you prepared for that, just a reminder, Guardian Angel Community Services is having their Angels Against Abuse event, 5K, that's on October 21st. And Take Back the Night is Thursday, October 5th at 6 p.m. at Hufford. And those are important because, again, a lot of folks in our community are impacted by domestic violence. And sometimes domestic violence is not somebody bashing your head against a wall or punching you or kicking you. It's degrading you, it's humiliating you, it's being in control of you. And domestic violence and sexual assault are about control and power. And just to students and staff and everybody out there, you deserve better than that if you're being impacted by that. And again, if you're aware of that, 1-800-25-ABUSE, DCFS is the hotline to call, because we want to help children while they're above ground. So, yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any other board reports? All right. Our last item on the agenda is announcements, public comment. I believe we have one.
Yes, ma'am. We have Miss Nicole Hines.
You may come up. So let me just inform you that at this time, members of the public may make comments to the Board of Education on any item concerning the district. This is not the opportunity for us to engage in a conversation or provide responses. The Board of Education respects and values the information delivered to us during the public comment. Your comment should be directed to us and all in attendance, and with respect and civility towards others. And you have 3 minutes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hello, my name is Nicole Hines. I am a parent of 2 children that attend Joliet West High School. There was an incident at Joliet West on August 31st at about 5:43 p.m. My son is a football player. My daughter is a cheerleader. When my son was leaving football practice, him and 3 other football players were attacked by a parent. This parent came to the school. She hit my son in the face, and she continued to hit these 3 other children. I was in the car not knowing what was going on. Finally got out the car and seen what was going on. My biggest concern is, where was the security guard at? Not one security guard was out there breaking it up, any of that. So me as a parent, it was devastating to see. And after my son said, "Mom, she hit me," it was like shock. By the time the security guards were outside, this woman had already hit 4 children and was able to get in her car and leave. Nobody knew what was going on or anything. Like I said, my biggest concern is, are the children protected at Joliet West? When I drop my son off and my daughter at school, I don't expect a parent to be able to come on those school grounds or anybody else and put their hands on not only my children, but the other children that were involved. So this is big to me because it's scary. When this happened on August 31st. I've been picking him up every day until September 15th. Only 2 times have I seen security outside since that incident. On August 31st and September 15th, I've seen 1 security guard outside. I have a problem with that because this incident happened, and who knows if it will happen again. So, and I was trying to write notes so I don't forget nothing. I know the student was able to return to school. So my question is this parent allowed to come back on school grounds? Does my son have to, if he see her, be in fear of if she may strike him again? I don't know, because I don't know how that goes. But I wanted to bring it to the board because I'm concerned for my child's safety and those other children, not just my kids, all of the children that way, or in Central for that matter. Because nobody should have been able to go up to that school and hit 4 children. Not 1 child, 4 children. So yeah, I wanted to bring it to you guys, and hopefully something will be done. The parent was arrested. She has to go to court or whatever the case may be, but I just wanted to bring it to the board so they can know what's going on and maybe put something out to make me feel better as a parent. I don't know. But I wanted to address the board with this. Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate your comments.